Good morning, everyone, and happy Thanksgiving to you. Let's start with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, beloved Master Paramhansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, dear friend and guide Swami Kriyananda, humbly we bow to you all. Help us to lift our spirits above the mundane realities of this world, that we may always feel your loving kindness behind everything that happens. We are your children. Guide us and bless us. Om Peace. Amen. Yesterday, a man that I don't know all that well, but has been around with Ananda for some years, felt he had a message for me and asked if he could talk to me. And as much as possible, I try to cooperate with people's requests. And it was easy enough to meet him outside and sit and chat for a bit. He's a healer of not an allopathic medical doctor, but has other modalities from other cultures and is well trained and very sincere in what he's doing. He's become quite convinced, and he gave me a great deal of evidence about the whole discussion about vaccines or not vaccines. This is being recorded in 2021. And so we had a long discussion. He had a lot of integrity and a lot of sincerity in what he said, and I listened attentively. Why would I not? I'm not at all engaged in that debate. I have made my own choices, and my choices have been toward vaccination for various reasons that I explained to him. The main reason being I need to be able to be free to serve. I need to be able to travel. And I decided it was not an issue on which I wanted to take a stand. So I hope this doesn't prompt any responses from people. I've heard a lot. I listen. I pay attention. It's not my issue. You might think it should be, but it isn't. I'm here to teach people to attune to God, and then we follow our own guidance after that. But what it reminded me of, powerfully reminded me of, is what chaos our society is in right now. And the intensity of his feelings, the fervor of his reasoning behind it, and I'm perfectly aware of all the other feelings on the other side. We are just the clash of titans, left, right, and center, even among people who have fundamentally the same values. Even those energies are being split. So yesterday also, as it happened, I was listening to a talk that Swamiji gave 20 or 30 years ago. I have a whole collection of CDs and I play them in my car. I find I'm more comfortable with that technology. And Swami is talking about some book he'd read about a practitioner who did past life regression and then talked to people about previous incarnations and also talked to people about the interlude between incarnations in the astral world in which they were making decisions about where they were going to incarnate next. Swamiji said, I'm not going to make any comment about whether or not, the practice, anything like that. He said, but here's what was so interesting. Now, I'm going to just back up a step to say something that many of you already know. During Paramhansa Yogananda's lifetime, and during the last 3.5 years when Swami Kriyananda was living with him, Master often spoke of very difficult times coming to all countries in the world, to the whole planet, and very specifically to the USA also, karma that has to be paid off, but the whole planet. Shortages of food, climate issues that will lead to crop failures. And Master didn't speak of climate issues per se. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he talked about natural cataclysms or cataclysms that could lead to famine and to war, and shortages of all sorts of difficulties, great difficulties. So all the time that I've known Swami Kriyananda, this has always been a subplot of the life that we're living. Now, what we have to understand is that Master also said the reasons these difficulties are going to come is for one reason only, which is civilizations as a whole have drifted away from attunement with divine realities, and humankind needs to reawaken to our relationship with the divine and bring ourselves back in harmony with the divine in each other, the divine in the natural world, the divine in our own hearts, because a new age, a higher age of higher consciousness is rising on the planet. And the old forms are clashing with the new energy, and it's not going to be a harmonious transition. But the entire and only point is to awaken us to greater joy, to a higher truth. Now, when Swami was talking about these past life regressions and people being in the astral world, the consistent theme that this author discovered in all the life regressions was that people knew they were coming to the planet when the planet was going to have a difficult time, but they were delighted to be coming to the planet at such a time, because they knew it was going to be an opportunity for enormous spiritual growth. And the prospect of enormous spiritual growth was so uplifting and thrilling to them that the process didn't seem to make any difference to them. Now, is this apocryphal? Is this factual? Who knows? But isn't it interesting? And I certainly can look back on my life and, there were some days that were not happy. There were periods that were better than others, and some of them were just downright ghastly. But there's nothing that I have been through in my life, no matter how difficult it was in the moment, that didn't ultimately resolve into a deeper relationship with God. I remember this woman, she was from Sweden, and I met her at the meditation retreat many years ago. She'd come all the way from Sweden to be at Ananda, to learn Master's teachings, to prepare herself for Kriya initiation. And that was a time when travel was less common, so it was really a big journey for her. And the reason she was there, as she explained it to me, was that she had grown up with a sister who was close to her in age. She and the sister were of one heart with each other, and they had looked forward to, becoming adults together, that they would marry. They would certainly marry men who were best friends. They would live next door to each other. They would raise their children together. It was just a joyous, beautiful prospect, except her sister got cancer and died. And this woman I'm talking to says that she had never suffered so much in her life, and as a result of her suffering, she had never prayed with the intensity that she prayed, because she had no other resource to keep her from completely losing her mind in grief. Because she prayed as she had never prayed before, she felt God's presence as she had never felt it before, which led her to Autobiography of a Yogi, which led her to the desire for Kriya, which led her to be sitting right in front of me. Having discovered a joy-filled reality that she never knew was there, and was certain she would never have found without the events of her life. So I took a great risk, and I said to her, given all the blessings that have come to you, do you think your sister's death was a tragedy? And of course it just, caught her like this. But she was strong and honest enough and had to say, I don't know what to say. She didn't know how to answer it because bad and good had become all scrambled up in her mind. So, talking to that man yesterday, seeing, and there was no reconciliation. We did not have an antagonistic conversation in any way because I had great respect for him. There was no reason why we should have. I have already made my decisions and I wasn't going to shift them, but I had great respect for what he was doing. So we could just agree to disagree and go forward. But it reminds me that Master's predictions will be fulfilled. Time is a difficult issue in prophecy. But you don't have to be a prophet to see it. And more weirdly, like I've been thinking about this for decades, but the concept pandemic never entered my thinking. Of course, it enters the thinking of medical doctors. Our own Dr. Peter at Ananda Village, just a few months before this happened, he started studying pandemics. It came to him. And so by the time this one developed, which he did not know it was coming, not with his logical mind, he'd already spent a great deal of time thinking and reflecting about how these things evolve. But what I never expected, you see, was that people of like mind would be divided. I always thought that, people, those of us who are trying to live for the light would be united with each other. But now this man comes right in, and there's even here, which is to say God will find a way to challenge our equanimity and to challenge our faith. Is that a bad thing? If in the end we are beings of light with greater magnitude, power, strength, courage, joy, everything, is the method that it takes to get there, is that a bad thing? Or should we be thankful for it? When Swamiji was going through some really terrible experience, I don't even remember now what the experience was. It was either litigation or financial or betrayal or health, whatever it was. He went to the dentist and he had no cavities. So when he was a child, he had colitis, and so during formative years, he didn't get enough calcium, and that has given him a lot of difficulties with his teeth as an adult. He also got bad dental care when he was in Romania in the 1930s, so as a child. So I said this sort of dopey American phrase, well, thank the Lord for little favors. That's kind of, I don't even know where the expression comes from, but it's something you say. And I was just making a very bad joke. Swamiji, it was so interesting when you would be with Swamiji because you would never know. You would never know when the lightning force of divine power would strike. And I don't mean strike me, but just strike. And the whole energy would shift. One of the deepest meditations I had with Swamiji was when there was a whole group of us on the sidewalk at Disneyland, which was just like not a place where you would feel that you would be suddenly elevated, but just the lightning force of divine power struck. And the sight of all those people just inspired Swamiji to a very deep sense of divine power, and we all were swept into it and sat on the sidewalk and meditated. So I make this silly remark to Swami. He just looks at me completely serious. He would not allow my levity to disrupt his relationship with Divine Mother, because he said to me, I thank Divine Mother for everything she sends. And why would we not? Because everything that comes to us is the active expression of Divine Mother's love for us, because it has the potential to teach us what we don't know and lift our energy to a higher level and draw us closer to her, closer to our own true self. Now, in this whole context, because, we are in extremely uncertain times, I pay a very small amount of attention to current events, enough to sort of keep track. And there's a lot of shadow people out there who are doing a lot of harm. The way I think about it is every soul is equally dear to Divine Mother. And some people have, they need to try out some pretty dark things to find out whether or not they're going to bring them happiness and what's going to happen next. And the age, the transition age from an upward moving age from Kali to Dwapara, which is the one that we're in, Divine Mother has sent a lot of her rowdy children to this planet because it's a time when rowdy children can really wreak a lot of havoc. And so, politically speaking, a lot of those rowdy children have positions of national prominence and international prominence, and they're getting to resurrect a lot of dark energies that many of us thought would never be resurrected again. Isn't that wild? And the masters are moving us. This world is not run by these politicians. This world is run by the, well, Master said, by the saintly beings in the Himalayas who are in charge of this world, who are acting on behalf of God, who are putting thoughts in the minds of people. But everybody who knew they were coming was really happy they were coming. Now, to this world, because we would get to grow so much. Now, here's the other part of it that I have really been enjoying, which is Dwapara Yuga is going to win. We are moving into a higher age. And that higher age is an age of energy. And Master has promised us that the result of all these rowdy children having their way for a while is that the shadow will be defeated and light will rise. This will never be a perfect world, and Dwapara Yuga is not a perfect age, but the forces of light will triumph. Master said in the end, India and America will unite and bring in an age of peace and prosperity that will at least last for some centuries, greater than the world has seen. Will that be in 20 years, in 100 years? Will our grandchildren see it, or will their grandchildren see it? Unfortunately, the details are a little obscure. But we can be absolutely certain that every one of us is going to have the opportunity to grow. And why else are we here? Even the fact that we might quail from the prospect of being inspired to grow, that's one of the things that we have to learn. That's why Swami said, I thank Divine Mother for everything that she sends. And ever since ever since I absorbed the simple fact that we are in an ascending age and that the light will triumph, my whole attitude toward everything, at least for the moment, we have good periods and bad periods, but at least for the moment, let's go to the word thanksgiving. It's like I'm so thankful to be part of this reality and to be able to just put my little bit into it. Swamiji spoke elsewhere, and this is actually printed in The Light Bearer, my book, The Light Bearer, and it was from 1981, I believe. I'm not certain, but Master's birthday, first 2 pages of that chapter, or the chapter before or after, but I think it's 81. And he was talking on January 5th in San Francisco, and he was talking, as he often did, about these predictions, this coming of a higher age. And the reason Master incarnated at this time, the reason that Swamiji devoted his every ounce of energy he had to sharing these spiritual teachings, is because that is the point right now, which is we all need to come back. When you really look at it deeply, all the difficulties we have in the world is because people have now see themselves as separate egos instead of as bubbles in the ocean of infinity, as children of God here to do God's work. And so Swamiji writes about how what's happening now is that as Dwapara Yuga is coming in, Swami says there's this powerful new energy coming to the planet. And many people are trying to cooperate with that energy, trying to cooperate with this new way of doing things, this new understanding. I was called to this from the age of 18. I was born to cooperate with this energy, starting a community, learning to meditate, helping other people to meditate, seeing all beings, whatever their nationality, ethnicity, religion, is we're all manifestations of the same divine, that the Sat Chit Ananda is the underlying reality of all of creation. Swami writes this beautifully in what he calls the way of the Ananda Sangi. And I have done a whole series of classes on that just very short pamphlet that Swami wrote, describing the essential qualities of Ananda, but it's the essential qualities of Dwapara Yuga. Underlying all creation is this divine Satchitananda, ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss. The purpose of our lives is to attune ourselves to that flow of Satchitananda and to share that with everyone. That's what Dwapara Yuga is. That's where we're going. So those of us who have been called to cooperate with this spiritual energy, it doesn't really matter whether we show or anybody notices or whether our job is important or not. What's important is that we give ourselves completely, that we use whatever talents God has given us in a way that will uplift. And far more than we know, each little expression of that light, each little painting, each song, each effort to help someone, each innovative idea about how to share and express these teachings, we are cooperating with a great flow of energy. So when we add our energy to that river of grace, our little cup, which is nothing in itself, but all together, we are participating in this reality. And on the other side, as Swami put it so perfectly, he said people who are feeling this powerful energy coming in, they're trying to harness it with their egos. And they're trying to use it to have more power for themselves. And that's the shadow force working against the light. We're all working with the same force, which is why ideas and shadow thoughts that I thought no one would ever seriously consider again, racial prejudice, religious prejudice, violence against minorities that you don't happen to like, is like, well, the question that comes to mind is, are you crazy? Like, we've seen the fruit of that. Is that really the world you want to live in? Well, they're trying to harness that energy and use it with the ego to get power for themselves. And the good news is, not merely the good news, but the great news is, they'll lose. How horrible the process will be is actually the question. But I thank God, Swami said, I thank Divine Mother for everything she sends me. And we have to realize that if the light is challenged, if the light within us is challenged, by what I mean by that is if circumstances have the capacity to make us feel separated from the light, well, apparently that's the good news. Because when we raise our energy or open our hearts or pray more desperately than we've ever prayed before, Divine Mother has promised to bless us. Swami calls this time a new dispensation, a special dispensation. He said that Master's entire descent into this world and all the powers that are surrounding him, because we have no monopoly on this. This is but great masters have come to the world at this time. Great new thoughts have come to the world at this time. A great power is coming into the world, and we can cooperate with it. And if we cooperate with it, it's a special dispensation. We will be lifted. I said to Swami, does that mean that we'll get more spiritual benefit than we deserve? And Swami sort of laughed and said, yes, he said, in a sense, that is what it means. Because it's a time, and this is the way I've thought of it, when the river of grace is really pouring in. So if you're swimming with the tide and the tide is powerful, then you have more power than you would have otherwise. So Thanksgiving is a time to be deeply grateful for every opportunity that Divine Mother gives us. And it's a holiday that started for certain historical reasons, but it doesn't make any difference what the history of it is. It is what it is now. It's a day in which we can give thanks. And above all, what should we give thanks for? We can give thanks for comfort and friends and love and company and shelter. I'm deeply grateful for that. Just Divine Mother takes wonderful care of us. But above all, and first and last and in the middle, we thank Divine Mother for everything she sends us. Because if we accept it in the right way, the gift will dissolve and we will receive the one who has given it to us. And that is the true gift for which we must give thanks always. God bless you, my friend.